When it comes to classic game franchises, it's hard not to love Capcom's Mega Man series. First released in 1987, the franchise has gone on to sell over 30 million games worldwide. Unfortunately, Capcom hasn't done much with the series lately, but back in the day, Mega Man was a big deal. And early on, you could only play the games on Nintendo systems, like the NES, Game Boy, and Super Nintendo. In fact, gamers would use this as an argument as to why Nintendo was better than Sega. Little did we know that Sega had their own exclusive Mega Man games on both the Genesis and the Game Gear. My 10-year-old mind would have been blown. Let's dive into Mega Man games on Sega. So how exactly did Mega Man, a series that was at the time exclusively on Nintendo consoles, make its way over to Sega? Well, it all started back in 1989, when the Sega Genesis was released in North America. Thanks to a strong marketing campaign, the popularity of the system slowly began to rise. It was around this time that Joe Morisi, Vice President of Marketing for Capcom USA, reached out to Capcom of Japan, suggesting that the company become a Sega licensee. However, that was easier said than done. For one, Capcom had a very strong relationship with Nintendo. They were one of the original third-party licensees for Nintendo, which gave them special provisions over other licensees. Second, the Genesis, known as the Mega Drive outside of North America, wasn't selling that well in Japan. A huge portion of Capcom's profits were coming from sales on Nintendo consoles. It simply wasn't worth risking their business relationship with Nintendo. Capcom did, however, license a few games directly to Sega for release, such as Ghouls and Ghosts, Forgotten Worlds, and Cheeky Cheeky Boys. But by 1993, the popularity of the Sega Genesis in North America and the Mega Drive in Europe could not be ignored. Morisi continued to insist that Capcom take action. His suggestion to become a Sega licensee was suddenly looking like a no-brainer. In 1993, a press conference was held at the Sofitel Hotel in Redwood City, California, announcing that Capcom had officially signed on as a third-party Sega licensee. Capcom also announced that their popular fighting game, Street Fighter II, would be coming to the Sega Genesis. Promotional art for the event featured Sega's Sonic the Hedgehog shaking hands with Capcom's Mega Man. This led many people to wonder, would Sega consoles be getting a brand new Mega Man game? The answer was yes. Sort of. Capcom Japan was busy with many projects, so rather than develop a whole new Mega Man game, they decided to release a compilation remake. Sega owners would finally be able to play Mega Man games that were previously only available on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Instead of being developed in-house, the game was outsourced to Minakuchi Engineering, the same company that worked on many of the Game Boy Mega Man titles. Keiji Inafune, the character artist, remembered development being somewhat of a disaster, stating, "The bug check phase for this title was an absolute nightmare. I felt so bad for the person who was in charge of the checking procedure that I even jumped in myself to help out in any way that I could." Despite the hiccups, the game was completed. On October 21st, 1994, Rockman Mega World, also known as Mega Man: The Wily Wars, was released in Japan. When it came time to bring the game over to North America, however, plans were quickly changed. Sega was getting ready to launch a new service known as Sega Channel. In a partnership with Time Warner Cable, Sega Channel would deliver games to the Genesis through a coaxial cable. For $15 a month, players could download a selection of games, demos, and cheat codes. Sega wanted exclusive titles for this new service, and approached Capcom about making Mega Man: The Wily Wars a Sega Channel exclusive. Capcom had to make a decision. Mega Man games were still being developed on Nintendo consoles. The Mega Man X series had just launched on the Super Nintendo, and was doing well. The series up to this point was Nintendo only, and it made both companies a lot of money. And once again, Capcom wanted to maintain a strong relationship with Nintendo. Thus, it was decided that Mega Man: The Wily Wars would only be available via Sega Channel in North America. Europe, however, would get a physical cartridge release. Now, you might be wondering how I have a copy of Mega Man: The Wily Wars. Well, this is actually a reproduction cartridge. and it's the only way you'll be able to play the game in North America without importing a Japanese or European cart. Wily Wars seems like an odd choice for a Sega Channel exclusive. This is a really big game, and Sega Channel erased your downloads every time you turned off the system. I'd be surprised if anyone in North America was able to fully enjoy this game when it was released, which is a shame because it's really good.
Mega Man The Wily Wars contains remakes of the first 3 Mega Man titles, previously only available on the NES. It also contains a new game called Wily Tower, which is unlocked after beating the first 3 games. Despite this being a compilation, there is technically a story. Ashamed by his previous defeats, Dr. Wily travels back in time in an attempt to change the past and defeat Mega Man. This gives an explanation as to why you're playing the first 3 games again. The story isn't important and is never specifically mentioned in the game. As far as remakes go, Wily Wars is faithful to the source material. There are some slight differences, but nothing dramatic. Graphically, it's a nice upgrade. Characters and levels are colorful and given much more detail. Some animations have improved as well. The music has also been revamped with that Sega Genesis sound, and it's well done. The original music is considered a classic, and these renditions sound just as good. One welcomed addition is a save feature. You no longer have to jot down passwords as you progress through the game. Wily Wars keeps track of each boss you defeat within each game. There's also no longer an easy mode in Mega Man 2. When Mega Man 2 first came out in North America, Capcom added an easy mode, fearing the game would be too difficult for American gamers. This option has been removed from the Wily Wars. Many of the bugs from the original releases have been fixed, such as the infamous pause-unpause glitch from the first game. Enemy AI has also been slightly modified. Overall, these are great ports of Mega Man 1, 2, and 3. If you enjoyed the games on the NES, you'll love them here too. The best part of Wily Wars, however, is when you beat the 3 games and unlock Wily Tower. Wily Tower contains 3 new robot masters to defeat, based on characters from the Chinese novel Journey to the West. Along with all new levels and music, Wily Tower also allows you to customize Mega Man with powers from each of the first 3 games. This is an awesome addition and gives you a ton of different strategies to play with. Each level also contains enemies from the first 3 games. Wily Tower feels like a cool remix of Mega Man. It's a nice extra on what is already an excellent compilation. The Wily Wars is good, but it does have some flaws. The biggest one has to be the control of Mega Man himself. It's not as smooth as the original games, and it can sometimes mess with your running and jumping. It's kind of hard to explain, but you'll definitely notice a difference when you play. Another issue is that the game slows down tremendously when there's a lot of action on screen. It impacts the game directly, as it can make certain sections a little easier, almost as if you're playing in slow motion.
Now, I would like to address one criticism. While reading up on this game, a lot of people kept commenting on how slow the game was. And not just when there's a lot of action on screen, but just slow overall. Well, the reason for this is that most people are probably playing the European release. Without getting super technical, European games are released on a video format known as PAL, while North American and Japanese games use a format called NTSC. If an NTSC game isn't specifically modified for the PAL format, it results in a slower game. About 16% slower to be precise. Wily Wars contain no such modifications, so the PAL release is sluggish. If you play the Japanese version or a reproduction cartridge, this is a non-issue. Mega Man The Wily Wars is a fantastic game, and it's a shame it never got a physical release in North America. If it did, we'd probably consider it a must-have Genesis title. It's never been re-released and isn't available for download on any consoles. The European version is expensive and suffers from the slowdown issue. The Japanese version is also expensive and has region lock, so it won't play on a standard North American Genesis console. It's rare that I say this, but I recommend picking up a reproduction cartridge. It's not going to cost you nearly as much as importing the game, and this is seriously one of the best games on the Genesis. Wily Wars was the first game in the franchise to grace Sega consoles, but the very next year in 1995, fans in North America would be treated to another Mega Man game, this time on Sega's handheld system, the Game Gear.
It's simply called Mega Man, although it's not a remake of the original. The game borrows elements from Mega Man 4, Mega Man 5, and Mega Man 2. The game was published by US Gold, a British company that sub-licensed many games from Capcom for distribution throughout Europe. They primarily worked on computer ports of Capcom titles like Street Fighter, but after the new licensing agreement between Capcom and Sega, they were given the task of making a Mega Man game for the Game Gear. Development was contracted out to a small studio known as Freestyle. The interesting thing is, Mega Man on the Game Gear only saw a release in North America, despite having a British publisher and developer. So, what's the game like? Well, it's interesting. Graphically, the game looks nice. It's similar to the NES games, with a few more colors. The biggest problem, however, is the screen size. It's small. So small, in fact, that the developers had to add vertical scrolling. This presents a huge problem when navigating through levels. You have to battle enemies in extremely tight quarters. In some areas, you have no idea what's below you, so you just have to take a leap of faith. While playing, you may notice a few changes. Mega Man can only fire 2 shots on screen instead of the usual 3. After defeating a Robot Master, you'll get their power, but it no longer has a unique name. For example, when you defeat Bright Man, you get the Bright Weapon instead of its usual name, Flash Stopper. Speaking of Robot Masters, there's only 4 of them instead of the usual 8. Stone Man, Napalm Man, Bright Man, and Star Man. Once you beat them, you'll play through Wave Man and Toad Man, before ultimately battling Dr. Wily. It's a short game, but it's difficult. There are no continues, and the screen limitations ramp up the difficulty. There's even a hard mode if you're up for a serious challenge.
Despite all this, well, it's Mega Man on the Game Gear. That's pretty incredible. My brother would have killed for a game like this, as he was always borrowing my Game Boy just to play Mega Man. Critics seem to agree. GamePro gave the game a 3.75 out of 5, stating, "Mega Man fans should dig this Game Gear version." Unfortunately, like the Wily Wars, Mega Man on the Game Gear has never been re-released, and grabbing the actual cartridge is, once again, expensive. I'd say this title is for serious fans only. And there you have it, the only 2 Mega Man games that were exclusive to Sega consoles. If you're a Mega Man fan, I suggest picking them up. They may be hard to come by, but it's a cool little piece of Mega Man's history. That's all for this episode of Game Historian. Thanks for watching.